You're done here, Gerry. Pack your things. You're finished. You'll never work in this industry again. The words hit the boardroom like a thunderclap. 20 people sat frozen around the mahogany table. Someone gasped. I heard Claire, our intern, start crying softly. Brent Holloway stood at the head of the table, his face red with fury. Security guards flanked the doorway. HR waited with termination papers. 10 minutes ago, we'd been celebrating. The billion-dollar waterfront hotel project was ours. I'd nailed the presentation to the Milan client. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, but then I'd done something Brent couldn't forgive. I'd exposed him. I believe in transparency, I'd said to the client, sliding a single document across the table. You might want to review page 39 before signing. The client's face went pale. The hidden clause was right there, funneling construction contracts to a shell company owned by Brent's cousin. Millions in kickbacks. Brent had stammered, made excuses. The client postponed signing. Now, 1 hour later, Brent was destroying my career. That was your last power play, old man. You're blacklisted. I looked around the room. Colleagues I'd mentored for decades avoided my eyes. I smiled, calm, certain, almost amused. Understood, I said quietly. Brent's eyes narrowed. He'd expected anger, fear, begging. Instead, I stood up, straightened my tie, and walked out. 4 months earlier, everything had been different. I was sitting in my corner office at Lockhart & Row, reviewing blueprints for a community center. 32 years with the firm. I'd helped design half of Chicago's skyline. Then James Lockhart knocked on my door. Gerry, meet our new CEO, Brent Holloway. Brent strode in like he owned the place. $1,000 suit, perfect teeth. Firm handshake that lasted too long. Gerald Langston, the legend himself. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I've heard so much about you. Good things, I hope. Oh, absolutely, though I'm excited to bring some fresh energy to this place. Innovation, disruption. I'd been around long enough to recognize corporate speak. Fresh energy meant old-timers like me were in trouble. I look forward to working together, I said. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. The board feels it's time for some changes. New leadership, younger perspectives. My stomach tightened. I see. Don't worry, you're safe for now, but I need team players who can adapt to my vision. After he left, I stared out my window at the city I'd helped build. Change was coming. The question was whether I'd survive it. The changes started immediately. Brent called all-hands meetings every Monday. He talked about synergies and paradigm shifts. He hired consultants who'd never designed a building in their lives. Projects that had taken months of careful planning were suddenly rushed. Safety reviews were shortened. Environmental assessments were skipped. We need to move faster, Brent announced. Time is money. Claire Martinez, our brightest intern, raised her hand during one meeting. What about the structural analysis for the Richmond project? The soil samples showed. Claire, right? Brent's voice was ice. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but let's leave the big decisions to the experienced professionals. Claire's cheeks burned red. She'd done the soil analysis herself. Found serious instability issues. After the meeting, I found her in the supply closet, crying. It's not safe, she whispered. The foundation will crack within 5 years, maybe sooner. I know, I said. Keep documenting everything. Every shortcut, every ignored safety protocol. What's the point? Nobody listens to me. They will, I promised. Eventually, the truth always comes out. Claire looked at me like I was naive. Maybe I was. But I'd seen enough ambitious executives crash and burn to know this wouldn't last. The only question was how much damage Brent would cause first. 3 weeks later, Brent made his next move. Gerry, we need to talk. I was removed from the advisory committee. 30 years of guiding project approvals, gone with a signature. It's nothing personal, Brent explained. We just need more agile decision-making. Translation, my vote was the only thing stopping his sketchy project awards. Without committee oversight, Brent fast-tracked 3 major contracts. All went to the same construction company. All had inflated budgets. All skipped competitive bidding. I started staying late, reviewing documents Brent thought nobody would read. Shell companies, dummy corporations, a web of financial connections leading back to his inner circle. Young architects began visiting my office after hours. Mr. Langston, whispered Tom, a second-year associate. The Morrison Plaza blueprints. Brent wants us to approve load calculations we know are wrong. The steel specifications don't match the engineering reports, added Sarah. But he says the client's in a rush. I gave them the same advice I'd given Claire. Document everything. But what if we get fired? Tom asked. What if someone gets hurt because we stayed quiet? They left my office with heavy faces. But they started keeping records, files, photos, emails, evidence. By month 3, the pattern was clear. Every major contract had irregularities. Bid documents with redacted names, estimates that doubled overnight, specifications that changed after signing. I tracked everything in a private spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, connections. Brent was building an empire, but the foundation was rotten. The breaking point came when I discovered his latest scheme. The Milan client, a prestigious hotel developer, was flying in for the biggest pitch of the year, billion-dollar waterfront project, career-defining work. But the presentation drawings looked familiar. Too familiar. I checked my archives. There it was, a design I'd created 5 years ago for a different client. Same layout, same distinctive curved facade, same structural innovations. Brent had taken my work, changed a few details, and planned to present it as his own. I could have confronted him privately. Should have, maybe. Instead, I made copies of everything. The original blueprints, the presentation slides, the timeline proving the work was mine. Then I waited. The presentation was scheduled for Thursday morning. I'd worked 40 years to build my reputation. I wouldn't let Brent steal it in 40 minutes. Wednesday night, I barely slept. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully. Conservative suit, plain tie. The kind of man Brent thought he could dismiss. I arrived early and took my usual seat at the back of the boardroom. The Milan client was everything I'd expected. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, old money confidence. Brent launched into his pitch with typical flair. Buzzwords flew like confetti. Synergy this, innovation that. Then he unveiled the design. My design. As you can see, Brent said, laser pointer dancing across the screen, this revolutionary concept maximizes both aesthetic appeal and structural efficiency. The client leaned forward, intrigued. The curved facade is particularly innovative. How did you develop this approach? Brent didn't miss a beat. Years of experimentation, pushing boundaries, thinking outside conventional architectural paradigms. I felt my jaw clench. Those curves had taken me 6 months to perfect. Countless stress calculations, prototype testing, sleepless nights solving problems Brent couldn't even pronounce. The load distribution system is especially clever, the client continued. Thank you. I'm quite proud of that innovation. I'd heard enough. I cleared my throat and stood up. Excuse me, I said quietly. I believe there's something you should see before signing. The room went dead silent. Brent's face drained of color. I walked to the front, pulled out a manila folder, and placed it in front of the client. Page 39 has some important details. The client opened the folder. His expression changed as he read. Hidden in the standard contract language was a clause requiring all construction work to go through Holloway Construction Solutions, a company owned by Brent's cousin. No competitive bidding, no cost controls, automatic 20% markup. Mr. Holloway, the client said slowly, can you explain this? Brent's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's a standard industry provision. I've been in this business 30 years, the client replied. This is not standard. The room held its breath. I believe in transparency, I said calmly. I thought you might want to take another look before signing. The client closed the folder. I think we need to postpone this signing. My legal team will need to review these documents more carefully. Brent's face went from pale to red. Of course, he stammered. Take all the time you need. Though I assure you, everything is completely standard. The client stood. Mr. Langston, isn't it? Perhaps you could walk me through some of these technical specifications. You seem quite familiar with the details. For the next hour, I explained the design. The real design. How the curved facade distributed wind loads. Why the foundation required special considerations. What made the structural system work. The client listened intently, asked pointed questions, took notes. When he left, he shook my hand. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Langston. We'll be in touch. The boardroom emptied quickly. Only Brent and I remained. He stood there for a long moment, fists clenched. You have no idea what you just did. I protected a client from making a mistake. You humiliated me, in front of everyone. You humiliated yourself. His eyes went cold. We'll see about that. 1 hour later, security arrived. The blacklist was swift and brutal. 3 recruitment calls that week. All canceled within hours. A lunch meeting with an old client. He wouldn't make eye contact. Sorry, Gerry, you understand. My professional network vanished overnight. Emails went unanswered, phone calls to voicemail. Brent had made good on his threat. For 40 years I'd been Gerald Langston, respected architect. Now I was radioactive. I spent my days cleaning out my office. 40 years of memories in cardboard boxes, awards, photos, letters from grateful clients. Claire helped me pack. This isn't right, she said, taping up another box. Everyone knows you're the most ethical person here. Ethics don't pay the bills. What will you do? I looked around my empty office. Figure it out. That weekend, I rented a storage unit. Boxes and boxes of old projects. Blueprints I'd kept for sentimental reasons. As I sorted through them, a pattern emerged. Half the firm's major projects from the last decade had my fingerprints on them. Initial concepts, structural solutions, design innovations that Brent now claimed as company property. More importantly, I found evidence of problems. Safety reports that were ignored. Engineering concerns that were overruled. Shortcuts that compromised structural integrity. I wasn't just unemployed, I was sitting on a time bomb. 2 weeks after my firing, Claire resigned. I can't do this anymore, she told me over coffee. The Richmond project broke ground yesterday. They're using the faulty foundation specs. Did you document everything? She slid a flash drive across the table. Every email, every ignored report, every safety concern. What will you do now? I have an interview with the city planning department, whistleblower protection. They want to know about Lockhart and Rowe's recent projects. I felt a spark of hope. Good for you. Will you testify if they ask? I thought about my empty bank account, my ruined reputation, my uncertain future. Yes. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unlisted number. Mr. Langston, this is Marcus Webb from the board. Could we meet privately? Marcus had voted to sideline me 6 months ago. Why was he calling now? We met at a quiet diner downtown. I made a mistake, he said without preamble. Something's off with Brent. The financial reports don't add up. Projects are over budget. Clients are asking questions. What kind of questions? Cost overruns, safety concerns, quality issues. He leaned forward. We need someone with credibility to review our recent projects. Quietly. I'm blacklisted, remember? Not by me. Will you help? I stirred my coffee, thinking. Brent had destroyed my career. But he might have destroyed something more important, the reputation of a firm I'd helped build for 3 decades. I'll need access to all project files. Done. And protection from retaliation. You have it. We shook hands across the table. Working in secret felt strange after 40 years in the spotlight. Marcus gave me access to the firm's servers through a private account. I worked from my apartment, reviewing project after project. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. 12 major contracts in 6 months, all with cost overruns exceeding 20%, all using subcontractors with ties to Brent's network. Quality reports that were falsified, safety inspections that were rushed, environmental assessments that were incomplete. 3 projects were already showing structural problems, cracks in foundations, premature concrete failure, steel connections that didn't meet specifications. The Richmond project, the one Claire had warned about, was the worst. Soil instability that everyone knew about but nobody wanted to address. I compiled everything into a detailed report. 40 pages of evidence, financial irregularities, safety violations, ethical breaches. But I needed more than documentation. I needed credibility. That's when the phone calls started. Old clients reaching out privately. Gerry, can we talk? We have some concerns about recent work. A hotel chain questioning structural modifications made after I left. A university worried about foundation problems in their new library. A developer frustrated with cost overruns and quality issues. One by one, I took their calls. Mr. Langston, thank you for taking our call. It was Robert Chen, the developer of the university library. I'd worked with him 5 years ago on a community college project. The new library is having problems. Cracks in the main support beams. The engineering firm says it's normal settling, but you don't believe them. I trust your opinion more than theirs. Could you take a look? I'm not officially. I know what happened at Lockhart and Rowe. I also know your reputation. Will you help us? Privately? 2 days later, I walked through the library with Robert and his structural engineer. The cracks were obvious. More concerning were the repairs that had already been attempted. Someone had been covering up problems for months. The original blueprints called for steel reinforcement here, I explained, pointing to a critical joint. But the actual construction used aluminum. Half the strength, quarter the cost. Can it be fixed? Yes, but it'll be expensive. Robert's face was grim. More expensive than lawsuits when the building collapses? That consultation led to another, then another. Word spread quietly through Chicago's development community. Gerald Langston was back, working independently, fixing problems that others created. I wasn't getting rich, but I was paying bills. More importantly, I was protecting people. Meanwhile, Claire's whistleblower complaint was gaining traction. City inspectors were asking questions. The FBI was reviewing contracts. Brent's empire was starting to crack. The first public sign of trouble came 3 months after my firing. A small item in the Chicago Tribune business section, local architecture firm under investigation for bid irregularities. No names mentioned, but anyone in the industry knew they meant Lockhart and Rowe. That same week, the Richmond project made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Foundation cracks force evacuation of new office complex. 60 families displaced, millions in repairs, construction halted indefinitely. I read the article with mixed feelings. Vindication for Claire and me, disaster for innocent residents. My phone rang within hours. Gerry, it's Marcus Webb. We need to talk, urgently. We met at the same diner. Marcus looked haggard. The board is in crisis mode. 3 more projects are showing problems. The Richmond situation is a catastrophe. Insurance companies are asking questions we can't answer. What about Brent? He's blaming everyone but himself. Says the problem started before he arrived. Claims you left the projects in bad shape. I felt anger rise in my chest. That's a lie. I know, but he has allies on the board. People who benefited from his deals. Marcus slid a thick envelope across the table. Emergency consulting contract. 6 months. Full access to review and fix whatever needs fixing. I stared at the envelope. What's the catch? No catch. We need someone who knows what they're doing. Someone clients trust. And Brent? Brent doesn't know about this yet. I opened the envelope. The fee was substantial, enough to rebuild my savings. More importantly, enough to rebuild my reputation. When do I start? Monday. Walking back into Lockhart and Rowe felt surreal. Same marble lobby, same security guards, same receptionist who'd watched me get fired 4 months ago. Mr. Langston, she said nervously, welcome back. Marcus met me at the elevator. We've set up a temporary office on the 15th floor, away from the main executive suites. Away from Brent, you mean? He's not happy about this arrangement. My new office was smaller than my old one, but had better views. I spent the first day reviewing project files, getting caught up on the disasters I'd missed. It was worse than I'd thought. 6 projects with serious structural issues, 4 facing lawsuits, 2 shut down by city inspectors. Young architects began visiting my office immediately. Mr. Langston, said Tom, the same kid who'd worried about the Morrison Plaza calculations. Thank God you're back. Nobody listens to our safety concerns anymore. What kind of concerns? He pulled out a tablet, showed me photos from the Morrison site. Look at these beam connections. They're using the wrong bolts, half the tensile strength they should have. I studied the images. Shoddy work, dangerous shortcuts. We'll prove this. Brent signed off personally, said the engineer was being too conservative. I made notes. Another problem to add to the growing list. Keep documenting everything, I told Tom. Things are about to change. The confrontation with Brent was inevitable. He stormed into my office Thursday morning, face red with fury. What the hell are you doing here? Good morning, Brent. I'm here to help clean up some project issues. You were fired, blacklisted. This is my company now. Actually, it's the board's company. They hired me as a consultant. Consultant for what? I gestured to the stack of problem reports on my desk. Quality control, safety review, client relations. His eyes narrowed as he read the project names. Richmond, Morrison Plaza, University Library. Those projects are fine. Any problems are pre-existing conditions from your tenure. The Morrison Plaza was designed after I left. Details. Brent. 6 projects are facing serious structural issues. The Richmond Foundation failed completely. We need to fix these problems before someone gets hurt. The only problem here is you undermining my authority." He leaned across my desk, voice dropping to a whisper. "I destroyed your career once. I can do it again. You're welcome to try." Something in my tone made him pause. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "We'll see about that." After he left, I called Claire at the city planning department. "How's the investigation going?" "Better than expected. We have 3 contractors willing to testify about bid rigging, 2 city inspectors who were pressured to approve faulty work." "What about federal interest?" "FBI opened a formal investigation yesterday. Fraud, corruption, conspiracy. How long before arrests? Hard to say, but Brent's name is all over the documents." I hung up, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. The first public crack in Brent's armor came the following week. The Milan client, the one who'd postponed signing after seeing the hidden clause, announced their project was moving forward, with a different firm. The press release was diplomatic but clear. "After careful consideration, we've decided to partner with Langston & Associates for our Chicago waterfront development." Langston & Associates didn't exist yet, but it would. My phone started ringing immediately. "Gerry, it's Robert Chen. I'm hiring you permanently for the library reconstruction. Can you handle the project management?" "Gerry, this is Sarah Kim from the hotel chain. We need someone to review all our recent Lockhart and Rowe projects. Interested?" "Mr. Langston, we represent a group of developers who worked with your former firm. We'd like to discuss some concerns." By the end of the week, I had more work lined up than I could handle alone. That's when Claire called. "I'm done with city planning," she said. "Too much bureaucracy. I want to build things, not just regulate them." "What did you have in mind?" "Partnership. Langston and Martinez. You handle design and client relations. I handle project management and regulatory compliance." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "When can you start?" "Monday." We met at a coffee shop to discuss details. Young, old, different generations but same values. "What about Lockhart and Rowe?" she asked. "I finish my consulting contract, clean up what I can, then we go independent." "Think clients will follow?" "They already are." Brent's response was predictable and desperate. An emergency all-hands meeting, standing room only in the main auditorium. "Some of you may have heard rumors," he began. "Let me be clear. Lockhart and Rowe is stronger than ever. Recent challenges are simply growing pains as we modernize our operations." He clicked to a slide showing financial projections. Revenue is up 15%. New contracts are being signed daily. Market share is expanding. What he didn't mention, most of that revenue was tied up in legal disputes. Half the new contracts were from companies he had financial relationships with. "Some former employees have chosen to spread malicious rumors about our projects and practices. These individuals are simply bitter about being left behind as we embrace the future." I was sitting in the back, taking notes. Several young architects glanced my way nervously. "Let me be absolutely clear. Any employee who chooses to work with competing firms while under contract with Lockhart and Rowe will face immediate termination and legal action." The room was dead silent. Everyone knew he was talking about me. "We don't negotiate with disloyal employees. We don't compromise with those who would damage our reputation for personal gain." After the meeting, Tom approached me carefully. "Mr. Langston, that felt like a threat." It was. "What do we do?" "Document everything, keep your heads down. Trust the process." But privately, I was worried. Brent was getting desperate. Desperate people make dangerous decisions. The FBI moved faster than anyone expected. Dawn raids on 3 construction companies tied to Brent's network. Computers seized, bank records subpoenaed. The news broke during our weekly board meeting. Federal investigation expands to include Chicago architecture firm. Marcus read the headline aloud, his face grave. "Gentlemen, we have a serious problem." Board members started talking over each other. Liability concerns, insurance implications, damage control. Brent sat at the head of the table, unusually quiet. "This is obviously a fishing expedition," he finally said. "Disgruntled former employees making false accusations." "False accusations?" Marcus pulled out a thick folder. "We have documented safety violations on 6 projects. Cost overruns exceeding $40 million. Quality failures that forced building evacuations. Those are isolated incidents." "Isolated?" "Brent, pattern analysis shows systematic problems with every project you've personally overseen. The room erupted in arguments. Some board members defended Brent, others demanded answers. I sat quietly, letting them fight. Finally, board chairman William Cross called for order. We need an independent review of all projects from the last 6 months. Full audit. External oversight. I object, Brent said quickly. That's unnecessary and expensive. More expensive than federal prosecution? The vote was unanimous. Even Brent's allies couldn't argue against due diligence. Cross turned to me. Mr. Langston, would you be willing to lead this review? Yes. Full access to all records? All personnel? Required. Brent's face was stone. This is a mistake. The mistake, Cross replied, was not listening to experienced voices sooner. The audit revealed what I'd suspected but couldn't prove before. Systematic fraud, bid rigging, safety violations, quality control failures. 23 projects with serious irregularities, $47 million in unexplained cost overruns, dozens of safety reports that were ignored or suppressed. But the smoking gun was simpler than I'd expected. Email records showing Brent explicitly ordering subordinates to ignore engineering recommendations, safety concerns dismissed as excessive caution, structural modifications made without proper analysis. The Richmond Foundation failure wasn't an accident. It was the inevitable result of cutting corners to maximize profits. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, 200 pages of evidence, financial records, engineering analyses, email communications. Claire helped me organize the technical data. Her regulatory experience was invaluable. This is overwhelming, she said, reviewing the latest section. How did nobody catch this sooner? People did catch it. They were ignored or fired. Like you. Like me. We worked 18-hour days for 2 weeks. When we finished, the evidence was undeniable. I delivered the report to the board on a Friday afternoon. Take the weekend to review it, I told them. Monday, we need to make some decisions. That evening, Claire and I celebrated with dinner at a quiet restaurant. So what happens now? She asked. Justice. And after justice, we build something better. Monday's board meeting was the shortest in company history. 20 minutes. Unanimous vote. Brent Holloway was terminated immediately. No severance, no transition period. Security escort to clean out his office. I watched from the lobby as he was walked out. Same route I'd taken 4 months earlier, but his face was red with anger, not calm like mine had been. He stopped at the security desk and looked back. Our eyes met across the marble floor. This isn't over, Langston. Yes, I said quietly. It is. The FBI arrested him the following Tuesday. Wire fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, 23 federal counts. The perp walk made every news channel in Chicago. Brent in handcuffs, trying to hide his face from cameras. I didn't feel satisfaction watching it, just sadness for what could have been. The fallout was swift. 3 board members resigned. The firm's insurance was canceled. Half a dozen projects were suspended, pending legal review. Marcus Webb was named interim CEO. Will you stay? He asked me. Help us rebuild? I looked around the boardroom where I'd been humiliated 4 months earlier. No, I said. It's time for something new. The Milan project, among others. We shook hands. Professional respect restored. Langston and Martinez opened 6 weeks later. Small office in a converted warehouse, exposed brick walls, natural light, space for creativity. Our first employee was Tom, the young architect who documented the Morrison Plaza problems. Then Sarah. Then 6 more refugees from Lockhart and Row. We're building something different here, I told them at our first team meeting. Quality over quantity, ethics over profit, client service over ego. The Milan project was our first major contract. 3-year timeline, $100 million budget, international prestige. But I was prouder of our smaller projects. The community center redesign, the school renovation, the affordable housing complex, work that mattered. Claire proved to be an exceptional partner. Her regulatory expertise kept us ahead of compliance issues. Her project management skills kept everything on schedule. You know, she said one evening as we reviewed plans for the hotel project, a year ago I was afraid to speak up in meetings. What changed? I learned that silence isn't safety. It's complicity. The Richmond office complex was finally reopened 8 months later. New foundation, proper engineering, safe construction. The displaced families moved back in. Kids played in the courtyard. Life returned to normal. Nobody thanked us publicly. But I got a handwritten note from one of the residents. Thank you for not staying quiet. The trial started 18 months later. Federal courthouse downtown, media circus outside. Brent in an expensive suit, flanked by lawyers. I testified for 3 days, detailed explanations of structural engineering, safety protocols, industry standards. Claire testified about the whistleblower complaint, the pressure to stay quiet, the culture of cutting corners. Tom and Sarah testified about being forced to approve work they knew was dangerous. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, email chains, expert witness testimony. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on 19 counts. Brent got 12 years in federal prison. His cousin got 8. 3 contractors got probation and fines. Justice served. But the real victory had happened months earlier. Langston and Martinez was thriving. 23 employees, 12 active projects, waiting list of potential clients. Most importantly, we were proving that ethical business practices weren't just morally right, they were financially successful. The Milan Hotel project won 3 international design awards. The community center became a model for sustainable architecture. The affordable housing complex was featured in Architectural Digest. Work I was proud of, work that would last. 2 years after my firing, Lockhart & Rowe filed for bankruptcy. Legal costs, insurance settlements, loss of reputation. A 70-year-old firm destroyed by one man's greed. Marcus Webb called me personally. We're closing the doors next month. Thought you should know. I'm sorry it came to this. Don't be. We made our choices. We ignored warning signs. We prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. What's next for you? Retirement. Maybe consulting. Clean slate. Some of the remaining staff asked to join our firm. We hired 12 of them. Good people caught in a bad situation. The old Lockhart & Rowe building was sold to a tech company. 30 floors of history converted to open-plan offices and ping-pong tables. I drove by one afternoon. The company name had been removed from the facade. Empty windows reflected the Chicago skyline. 40 years of my life erased by poor decisions and corrupt leadership. But I wasn't sad. I was grateful. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. Mr. L, can you check these calculations? I looked up from my desk. Jennifer, one of our newest hires, was holding a structural analysis report. Load distribution? Yes, sir. The museum expansion. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I reviewed her work. Thorough, conservative, safe. Looks good, but add another support beam here. I pointed to a critical junction. Better safe than sorry. Will that increase costs? Slightly, but it'll prevent problems down the road. She nodded and headed back to her desk. Another young architect learning to prioritize safety over speed. Claire knocked on my office door. Got a minute? New client inquiry. What kind of project? Elementary school. Earthquake retrofit. Principal says their current architect keeps cutting corners to save money. Sounds familiar. Very familiar. Want to take the meeting? I looked around my office, modest but comfortable. Photos of completed projects on the walls, awards from grateful clients. But the real satisfaction came from the daily work. Training young architects, protecting public safety, building structures that would last. Schedule it for Thursday. Already did. 5 years later, the Milan client called again. Mr. Langston, we have another project, larger than the hotel, international headquarters. Interested? I was sitting in our expanded offices, 50 employees now, 3 floors of the converted warehouse. Tell me about it. Mixed-use complex, office space, retail, residential, flagship project for our Chicago expansion. Timeline? 4 years. No rush. We want it done right. No rush. Those words would have been foreign at Lockhart & Rowe under Brent's leadership. We're interested. Excellent. Oh, and Mr. Langston? We specifically requested your firm because of your reputation for integrity. That matters more than low bids. After I hung up, I walked through our offices. Young architects bent over drawing tables, engineers reviewing calculations, project managers coordinating with contractors. The energy was different from my old firm, focused but relaxed, ambitious but ethical. Tom, now a senior associate, looked up from his computer. Good news, Mr. L? Very good news. That evening, Claire and I stayed late to review the preliminary project details. Remember when we were afraid we'd never work again? She asked. Brent's threat turned out to be hollow. More than hollow. Wrong. I thought about that day in the boardroom. The moment I'd chosen transparency over job security. The moment that changed everything. Today I'm 63 years old. 5 years since the firing that seemed like the end of my career. I sit in my office looking out at the Chicago skyline. Buildings I helped design stretch toward the clouds. Safe structures, ethical construction. Work that will outlast all of us. My phone rings constantly. Client inquiries, partnership offers, speaking requests. The industry knows our story now. The architect who chose integrity over politics. The firm built on doing things right. But the moment I'm proudest of happened yesterday. Jennifer, the young architect who used to ask about calculations, presented her first independent design to a client. Community library. 3 stories, sustainable materials, beautiful and functional. I learned from the best, she told me afterward. You learned from making good choices, I corrected. That evening, I thought back to the moment Brent fired me. The smile that confused him. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was certainty. Certainty that truth has a way of surfacing. That quality outlasts politics. That doing the right thing, even when it costs you, eventually pays dividends you can't calculate. Brent thought he was burying me. But I was a seed, and now I'm surrounded by a forest of ethical architects, each one committed to building a better future. The smile wasn't for him, it was for what I knew was coming. Justice, redemption, success on my own terms. Sometimes the end is just the beginning.